Hi there, my name is John, and I've been teaching myself to draw over the last year or so. I guess I haven't been teaching myself. I've been watching an exorbitant amount of YouTube videos to learn to draw. And I feel like I've made a lot of progress. Now, I'm still a beginner. I'm not a professional, or I'm not even particularly advanced, but I've learned quite a few things in the last, 300 and some days, and I thought I would just share what I've discovered so far. Maybe you'll find it useful on your journey. So this is an image that I've just recently completed, and I'm sure a year from now I will probably look back at it and not think it's all that great, or at least I'll see a lot of the mistakes. And then here's an image that I drew a year ago, just learning to draw faces. And looking at it now, it is pretty simplistic, and I can see lots of problems with it, and the proportions aren't quite right, but you know what? You just learn as you go, and you make progress sometimes very quickly and sometimes very slowly, and that's okay. So during this video, you're going to watch me do a time lapse of that first image that I've recently completed. And while that plays, we'll just go ahead and talk about, let's see, how many points do I have here? Looks like 8. Looks like 8 different points, eight different things I want to share. So the first thing that I found really helpful was to limit my subject matter. When I first got started, I kept changing the things that I was drawing and working on. I would draw some faces, and then I would draw trees, and then a castle, and then an environment, and then some animals, and a deer, and then a woman, and all these different things. And the problem is that dilutes your focus, and you never really grasp in greater detail, I think, kind of the nuances of lighting and structuring just one thing. And so I really am enjoying portraits and faces. I've done mostly female, but a few male faces as well, and I'm finding that staying really focused on that specific genre is allowing me to discover it and improve in ways I think that I wouldn't if I was branching out and trying lots of different things. And I'm sure eventually I'll get sick of this and I'll want to try something new, but I think abandoning all of those different interests in the beginning was probably a pretty good choice. Focus on anything in life is going to yield better results than just diluting your attention. So the second thing I want to talk about is not getting caught up in tools or what computer you're using, or an iPad or a tablet that goes on a desktop with a PC, or what kind of pen, how much sensitivity does your pen have? All of this stuff is, you just pick something that feels good and works to you, and then it's time to move on and focus on compositional rules and light and color and learning kind of all these really important basics that have nothing to do with the tools or the brush or the pen or the pencil that you're using. If you can't afford any fancy digital equipment, then just grab a pencil and a piece of paper. And you can learn a whole lot just using those tools, and they're pretty much accessible anywhere. The next thing that I did, and I think is really helpful, is I just consumed an absolute ton of educational material. I downloaded books. I consume an absolute ton of art YouTube content from a bunch of different people. I'll list a few of them in the comments so as not to drag this on. But I think just an absolute critical mass of information is what's needed, so you can slowly absorb the stuff that matters and is important, and then start integrating that into the things that you're practicing. And on that point, then I like to take those things that I'm learning and put them into practice immediately. Not all of it is applicable. Sometimes you learn something that's interesting, but it doesn't really apply to what you're doing. But anytime I would hear something that really struck me as kind of revolutionary or super helpful, or I would see a technique that really interested me, I would immediately go to my workstation or my iPad and start trying it out. And those cycles of learning, practicing, sleeping on it, and then getting up and doing it all over again, I think that's what helps you progress and move forward. And the more of those loops that you can get in, the faster you'll progress. So one thing you see recommended often is to just pull up a canvas and draw, let's say, hands over and over, or faces over and over, or a tree over and over, to start to practice that skill. And while I do find that's very much useful, and that repetition will build skills and has helped me build skills in drawing and painting faces, I also found that when I did too much of that, I got really bored, and my interest in continuing making art just sort of dissipated over time. So most of what my practice has been practicing to do a specific image that I want to create. So instead of just drawing faces, I'm drawing faces so that I can take one and bring it to completion and add color and value and all of those kinds of things. Practice for practice sake is obviously useful, but I think part of what makes art fun is making things and creating things. And so if you never get to give yourself that reward, at least for me, I lost interest really quickly. So I made a point of, even though it takes me a long time to make these more advanced drawings and paintings, it's still practice for me, and it gives me some sort of light at the end of the tunnel because drawing's really hard. Another thing that has really helped me, I think, is keeping the scope of what I'm doing very narrow. In the first few months, I would try to do a person who is standing in a complex environment or like in a city with lots of lighting and signs and crazy stuff that honestly, I just didn't really have the skill to pull off. And so I kept taking away those elements that weren't the focus of the image so I could get down to practicing just a basic thing, which is similar to the first point. But it's not just not painting different subjects. It's an issue of not trying too many things in a new drawing or painting as well. So if you kind of have eyes figured out, but you're still shaky on values like skin tones and things like that, then make sure that that's the thing you're focused on in the next thing that you paint or draw. If you've got values sort of figured out and eyes figured out, but you're working on hair, then the next time that you do another piece, really put your time and effort into the hair, but make sure that the other elements are things you've already done or similar to things you've already done so that you're not forcing yourself to try too many new things at once, because that can be really overwhelming. It's a good way to sort of gradually build your skills over time. The last thing I would recommend is that you just pick a subject matter that you love, that you really enjoy. I've been a photographer for many years, and honestly, most of my photography has been sort of landscape, lifestyle with some people mixed in, but I've always kind of wanted to focus more on portraits, but there's lots of practicalities that don't work well with portraits. So you gotta go find somebody or approach strangers or hire somebody or annoy your friends with your camera. And so learning to draw and paint gave me this medium to explore that subject matter without sort of all of the barriers. And I think people's faces are really interesting. Expression is really interesting. And even though my work isn't perfect and I'm sure there's lots of mistakes inside of it, I really enjoy when I finish just sitting back and seeing what I've made. I also like that in painting or drawing and illustration, you can take liberties and you can add things and create elements that are harder to do in real life. You can use colors that maybe aren't super realistic. Yeah, the whole thing just kind of fascinates me, and I think that's what you need too, is whatever fascinates you, that's where you need to look, and that's the kind of thing you need to start working with. Faces are not the easiest thing to draw. I probably should have started with mountains or rivers or skies, but it's not always a question of easy, it's a question of what do you like. Alright, that's all I have for this video. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch. Hope this was useful to you, and good luck on your journey. Be patient with yourself and enjoy the process of building up your skills over time.